On the very first day, I found myself in the guise of the nefarious stepmother in the narrative. My stepson, Gu Heng, stood before my bed, bearing a bowl of pitch-black medicinal concoction. His gaze was as cold as ice, and he spoke with a chilling tone. "Mother, you are unwell. Please drink your medicine." I beheld the eerie vapors rising from the ominous brew and the murderous glint in his eyes, which were far too mature for a mere 10-year-old, and in that instant, comprehension dawned upon me. This was the moment etched in the original protagonist's memories, the malevolent Gu Heng's first attempt to eliminate me. The wicked stepmother who had subjected him to relentless torment since my arrival 3 days prior. In the narrative, I had refused to consume the potion, instead shrieking as I hurled the bowl at his head, subsequently summoning the servants to hoist him up and administer a brutal beating, thus sealing our fates in an unending cycle of vengeance. Yet now, as I gazed at him, a smile unexpectedly graced my lips. I propped myself up with my frail body, beckoning him closer with a gentle wave of my hand, and in the softest of tones, I murmured, "Hunger, come here. Do you not think that by killing me, then your foolish father, seizing the Gu family fortune, and rallying a rebellion, you could exact your revenge and ascend to the highest throne?" Gu Heng's pupils dilated, his hand trembling violently as he held the bowl. With a swift motion, I drew him to the bedside, took the bowl from his grasp and carelessly set it aside. Then, from beneath my pillow, I retrieved a small booklet I had laboriously penned with a brush until the early hours of the morning, its handwriting crooked yet earnest, and pressed it into his hands. The cover boldly proclaimed 7 characters. On the Imperial examination and corruption, I gently patted his little head, my tone turning earnest and sincere. "Dear child, rebellion is a venture fraught with peril and minimal reward. Heed your mother's counsel. Let us forego the path of insurrection. Instead, let us pursue the Imperial examination, become a powerful minister, and then a grand corrupter. Had I asked that not a more enticing prospect?" 1. Gu Cheng clutched the thin booklet in his hands, his entire being frozen, as if he were not holding mere paper, but a searing iron brand. His pallid face, rendered excessively pale by prolonged malnutrition, bore a pair of obsidian eyes that fixated on me with intensity, filled with suspicion, vigilance, and a flicker of fear as if all his secrets had been laid bare. "What nonsense are you spouting?" His voice was dry, tinged with the characteristic rasp of youth. Yet he feigned composure. I chuckled softly, disregarding his bravado. I understood precisely what was swirling in this boy's mind. He was the last scion of the former dynasty's crown prince, taken in by the Gu family, merely a political pawn for the current emperor to showcase his benevolence. His father, Gu Xiaoming, the head of the Gu family, was a frivolous dilettante, wholly subservient to me, his newly married wife. The original owner of this body was a concubine of the current Grand Tutor, whose marriage to him was intended solely to monitor and undermine his prospects, ensuring he would never rise. In the narrative, Gu Cheng endured years of humiliation within the Gu household, ultimately exacting revenge on Gu Xiaoming and me at the age of maturity, rallying the remnants of the former regime to rebel, thereby becoming the arch-villain of the tale. Ultimately pierced through the heart by the protagonist, a gallant young general. How tragic. Possessing intellect, perseverance, connections, and initial capital, he chose the most arduous path. I felt a pang of pity for him. Am I speaking in vain? You know the truth within your heart. I leaned against the headboard and began slowly. Rebellion may sound grand, but in reality, it is a perilous endeavor fraught with chances of death. If victorious, you may seize the world. But how comfortable is that dragon throne? Below it lurk ravenous wolves. If defeated, your entire clan faces annihilation, and there will be no grave marker left behind. I extended a finger, tapping the booklet in his hand. However, the Imperial examination is a different matter. My voice brimmed with persuasive allure, akin to that of a masterful sales instructor. Consider this: you toil and study, achieve fame, and embark upon an official career. From then on, the skies are yours to soar and the seas yours to traverse. Do you need to wield a blade for revenge? Absolutely not. The quill is far mightier than the sword. Those you disdain, a single memorial can strip them of their positions, seize their homes, and banish them. Do you desire wealth? It's even simpler. Once you hold office and wield power, 3 years as a clean governor can yield a fortune of 100,000 taels of silver. Have you ever seen a rebel leader living as lavishly as the current prime minister? Gu Cheng's breaths grew noticeably more rapid, his knuckles whitening around the booklet. I knew my words were like a key, unlocking the door to his heart, long sealed by hatred. But the examination requires one to extol the words of the sages. To show loyalty to the emperor and love for the nation, he struggled, voicing his last doubt. I burst into laughter. Oh, foolish boy, how naive you are. What you utter and what you genuinely feel can hardly be the same. When writing, you may praise the sovereign like a blooming flower, inflating his pride, thus securing high rank and wealth. Once in power, whether to be loyal or treacherous is at your discretion. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Enunciating each word, true power does not stem from instilling fear through your blade, but rather from rendering others reliant on your quill. It is the art of manipulating the rules, leading your adversaries into a trap of your design, step by step. That is the essence of bloodless strategic maneuvering. I pointed at the book titled On the Imperial Examination and Corruption, concluding my argument. Open it and take a look. The first chapter discusses the self-cultivation of corrupt officials. Your mother has prepared a wealth of knowledge for you. Gu Cheng trembled slightly, lowering his gaze to the booklet that had upended his worldview, then raising his eyes to meet mine. The murderous intent in his gaze had dissipated, replaced by a complex swirl of confusion, shock, and a peculiar curiosity. After a long moment, he clenched the booklet tightly and turned to leave, forgetting even the bowl of poison. I knew then I had him hooked. 2. In the days that followed, Gu Cheng isolated himself within his chamber, refusing to see anyone. I relished the tranquility, beginning to familiarize myself with my new identity. The original owner was named Lu Hanyan, a concubine of the Grand Tutor, lacking intellect but possessing a malevolent heart. My unwelcome husband, Gu Xiaoming, was a frivolous dandy, preoccupied with poetry and painting, entirely neglecting family affairs. The vast Gu estate was managed by the matriarch, an avaricious and bitter old woman. The external businesses and lands were controlled by several distant relatives who reported annual losses. The entire Gu family was but a hollow shell, long since corroded from within. In the original narrative, Gu Cheng, amidst such conditions, carved a bloody path forward through sheer ruthlessness and the support of former loyalists. Now that I had arrived, his path was destined for a transformation. 3 days later, Gu Cheng finally emerged from his room. He appeared even thinner, dark circles under his eyes. Yet his gaze sparkled with an astonishing brightness, akin to a lone wolf that had found its way in the darkness. He approached me without a bow, staring intently, still clutching the tattered booklet. You were right, he spoke, his voice still hoarse, but imbued with a determination beyond his years. Rebellion is the last resort. I nodded with satisfaction. Have you come to an understanding? I have. He inhaled deeply. I wish to take the Imperial examination. Excellent, I snapped my fingers. From today onward, I shall personally oversee your education. Gu Xiaoming, upon hearing my decision, nearly overturned the inkstone in his shock. Madam, how can this be? Chang'er is unruly. Perhaps we should hire a strict teacher instead. I shot him a sidelong glance. Do you not trust me, my lord? Gu Xiaoming immediately cowered. No. You are absolutely correct, my lady. I could not be bothered to indulge in further conversation with him and commence Gu Cheng's rigorous training. In the first lesson, I did not teach him the Analects or Mencius, but led him to the account office in the southern part of the city. There, Gu Cheng's uncle, Gu Xiaoda, was verifying this year's harvest from the lands under his name. Upon seeing us, Gu Xiaoda greeted us with a forced smile. Ah, how unusual for the eldest sister-in-law to visit this humble place. I have come to inquire about your harvest this year, I stated bluntly. Gu Xiaoda immediately began lamenting. Oh, sister-in-law, do not mention it. This year has been fraught with natural disasters and human misfortunes. Not a grain has been harvested, and I have invested quite a bit of silver. I smiled lightly, remaining silent, merely gesturing for Gu Cheng to inspect the accounts. Gu Cheng furrowed his brow, flipped through a few pages, and quietly remarked, I see no discrepancies in the accounts. Is that so? I approached the ledger, casually flipping to a page and pointing at a figure. Uncle, I recall our water fields in the western part of the city yielded 3 stones per mu last year. This year, with favorable weather, how is it that the accounts state only 2 stones? Gu Xiaoda's eyelids twitched as he forced a laugh. Perhaps the tenants have been slothful. Oh? I flipped another page. Then why is this expenditure for firewood higher than last year's market price by 30%? I have heard that the newly appointed governor is quite incorruptible, forbidding the collection of excessive firewood fees. Cold sweat began to bead on Gushiota's brow. I continued. And what if this expense for repairing the water channels, or this bonus for the laborers? Uncle, your accounts are remarkably pristine. With each statement, Gushiota's complexion paled further. Gucheng stood beside me, his eyes widening in disbelief, as he had never imagined that a seemingly unremarkable ledger could conceal such myriad deceptions. Eventually, Gushiota could no longer bear the pressure and collapsed to the ground, pleading, "Sister-in-law, I was wrong. I shall never dare again." I ignored him, turning to Gucheng and asking, "Do you understand now?" Gucheng nodded in a daze. I patted his shoulder, initiating today's first lesson. Chinger, remember this. The writings of the sages serve as your stepping stone to a successful career, but these are the true skills necessary for your future in the bureaucratic realm. A single figure can lead to the ruin of a household. A single document can change the name of an entire plot of land. This is the power of the quill. Your uncle embodies the most despicable form of greed, riddled with flaws. A true master can transform the counterfeit into the authentic, rendering any investigation futile. This art is known as accounting, or rather, the art of checks and balances. I gazed at Gucheng's increasingly radiant eyes, a satisfied smile gracing my lips. Child, welcome to the true realm of power. Having dealt with Gushiota, I traced the roots and scrutinized several branches of the Gu family's enterprises. The process was straightforward. I instructed Gucheng to meticulously verify every ledger, line by line. He was astute, quickly evolving from a novice to a proficient auditor. The fraudulent accounts devised by those uncles were laid bare before him. I did not obliterate them entirely. Rather, I compelled them to return the ill-gotten gains, principal and interest alike, reclaiming the management rights of the assets for myself. The matriarch of the Gu family was so enraged she fell ill, cursing me as a calamity. I ordered my servants to lock her courtyard door, providing her only with plain porridge and simple dishes, under the pretext of praying for her, claiming it would purify her heart and desires. Gu Xiaoming, witnessing my decisive methods, was so intimidated that he dared not utter a word, retreating to his study, pretending he did not exist. In a mere fortnight, the entire Gu family was completely under my control. On this day, I placed a substantial stack of silver notes before Gucheng. This is the wealth we've reclaimed. A portion will be used to foster connections, securing the finest tutors and acquiring the most precious books for you. The remainder is your discretionary fund. Gucheng gazed at the pile of notes, his expression a complex tapestry of emotions. What do you wish for me to do? Quite simple. I produced a list I had prepared, instructing him to cultivate relationships with the individuals therein. The list included the most esteemed gentry in town, inconspicuous yet powerful clerks within the government, and even the most celebrated courtesans. Holding an official position does not solely rely on academic prowess. Connections are your weapon. I taught him to treat the gentry with respect, making them perceive a promising future in him, thus willing to invest in his potential. With the clerks, small acts of kindness would earn their unexpected intelligence when it mattered most. As for the courtesans, I paused, observing the faint flush on Gucheng's ears, and chuckled. Do not misconstrue. That is the most information-rich locale. Inebriated noble scions will divulge everything. You must learn to extract valuable insights from the chaos of information. This is known as intelligence analysis. Gucheng held the list, contemplatively silent for a long while. I recognized that this was yet another paradigm shift for him. He had been instilled with the notion that a gentleman should never stand beneath a precarious wall and that clear boundaries must be drawn with the unscrupulous. Yet I was teaching him how to dance with the rogues, even to utilize them. Go, I encouraged him, do not fear. You aspire to be a power broker, not a saint. The purest waters harbor no fish, the most discerning individuals attract no followers. The truly formidable can bloom the most exquisite flowers in a quagmire. Gucheng departed. He began to weave his first web of connections, clumsily yet resolutely, guided by my counsel. No longer was he the shadowy youth, nourished by resentment. He started to learn the art of smiling, the art of social niceties, and the art of toasting across tables. I witnessed his transformation with delight. I had engaged the finest tutors in the city to impart knowledge on classical texts, poetry, and prose. By day, he was a diligent and scholarly young man. By night, he returned to me, and I commenced my teachings on the art of imperial strategy and the intricacies of moral ambiguity. I explained to him that the essence of Han Fizi's doctrines of power is at the core of sovereign mastery, how a ruler can manipulate ministers, balance factions, and instill both reverence and fear in his subordinates, compelling them to serve him with unwavering loyalty. I recounted the rise of historical power brokers such as Li Si and Zhao Gao, elucidating their ascent and their tragic downfalls due to a moment's folly. Learn their methods, but evade their fates. I looked at him, my expression solemn. Chang'er, remember, power is the finest aphrodisiac, yet it is also the most potent poison. Never allow yourself to be ensnared by power alone. Always remember that you wield power to achieve your objectives. And what is my objective? He countered, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Your objective, I smiled, is to savor the pleasures that power bestows for an eternity, such as wealth-rivaling nations, a life of unbridled freedom, and witnessing your adversaries fall one by one, while you stand unscathed at the pinnacle. Gucheng nodded, as if grasping the essence of my words, albeit incompletely. Yet, the seed had been sown. One day it would take root and blossom into an unassailable colossus. And I, the most patient of gardeners. Time flew swiftly, and in the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Gucheng had transformed from a frail youth into a tall and graceful young man. His appearance, a testament to royal lineage, was strikingly handsome. Yet a lingering chill and aloofness shadowed his brow. Over these 3 years, he absorbed my teachings like a sponge, his knowledge advancing at an astonishing pace under the tutelage of esteemed masters. His cunning, honed by my guidance, became increasingly refined. He was no longer the child who required my hand-holding through the intricacies of accounting and gift-giving. Today, the Gu family was meticulously managed by him. The enterprises once squandered by distant branches were revitalized under his stewardship, flourishing even more than before. Utilizing the methods I had imparted, he wielded both benevolence and authority, consolidating the local ruffians and government clerks into his own cadre. Gu Xiaoming and the matriarch had long been marginalized, relegated to mere tokens of good fortune within the Gu household. Meanwhile, I had transformed from a malevolent stepmother into the revered Madame Gu, instilling both respect and trepidation in those around me. No one knew the true nature of the outwardly gentle and serene Madame Gu, nor did anyone suspect that the illustrious Gu family's eldest son, renowned for his talent, would privately engage in discussions with me about orchestrating a seemingly innocuous accident to devastate a rival's shipping business. Together, we were the most harmonious partners and the most dangerous accomplices. The day of the provincial examination drew near. That evening, Gucheng sought me out. The examination is the day after tomorrow. He stood before me, his demeanor a blend of complexity and anticipation. Are you prepared? I inquired. Yes. He hesitated, then added, I have heard that the chief examiner is Inspector Chen. He is known for his integrity and has a profound disdain for those who resort to cunning. I chuckled. What troubles you? Are you concerned that the gifts you've previously bestowed and the alliances you've forged might displease Inspector Chen? Gucheng remained silent, tacitly affirming my assumption. I approached him, adjusting his collar. Chang'er, you have yet to fully grasp the lessons. What I taught you is not to resort to deceit, but rather to navigate any set of rules with finesse. A figure like Inspector Chen would certainly disregard gold and silver treasures. But what if it were an authentic piece of calligraphy by Wang Shiji, which he cherishes above all? Gucheng's head shot up, eyes wide with surprise. How do you know? I smiled knowingly. I not only know of his admiration for Wang Shiji, but I also know he has spent 5 years in search of a replica of the... From a box, I retrieved the invaluable piece of calligraphy that had adorned our storeroom, purchased by his father to embellish our facade. Tomorrow, you shall personally visit Inspector Chen. Do not mention the examination. Simply convey that you fortuitously acquired this piece and wished to present it to him for his esteemed appraisal. If he were to accept it, your position at the provincial examination would be secured. If he declines, it matters not. Your courtesy is impeccable. And he will only perceive you as a respectful and earnest junior, significantly enhancing his impression of you. In any case, you incur no loss. I pressed the calligraphy scroll into his hands. Remember, the pinnacle of gift-giving lies in catering to the recipient's preferences, akin to providing coal in winter, touching their hearts so profoundly that refusal becomes impossible, and even upon acceptance, they feel compelled to express gratitude. Gucheng contemplated the scroll in silence for a long while. Ultimately, he performed a deep bow to me. "Mother, I understand." He addressed me as mother, not in the past with resentment and vigilance, but sincerely, infused with a hint of reverence and trust. I was momentarily taken aback, then smiled. This utterance of mother was something I had awaited for 3 years. The results of the provincial examination were without suspense. Gucheng achieved the highest honor, ranking first. Inspector Chen, on numerous occasions, extolled Gucheng's writings, declaring him to possess a talent that could govern the heavens and the earth. No one knew that behind this success lay the merit of a calligraphy scroll. The snowy day after a clear sky, Gucheng's name reverberated throughout Jiangnan. Countless congratulatory letters poured into the Gu residence, some seeking to establish connections, and many hoping to marry their daughters to him. I turned them all away. The time was not yet ripe. I told Gucheng, "Your future lies in the capital, not in this small Jiangnan." In the spring of the following year, we set off for the capital to participate in the Imperial examination. Before our departure, my rather unremarkable husband, Gu Xiaoming, grasped my hand, tears streaming down his face. "Madam, you and Chenger are indeed the Qilin of our Gu family. What merit do I possess?" I smiled and let him finish his rambling before directly inquiring, "Is the money prepared?" Gu Xiaoming was momentarily taken aback, then hastily presented a heavy purse of coins. The expenses for traveling to the capital and the necessary social engagements amounted to astronomical figures. The Gu family was no longer the empty shell it had been 3 years prior. The business ventures I had encouraged Gucheng to undertake had yielded substantial profits. Our journey to the capital was not solely for examination, it was also for investment. The capital, being the emperor's domain, is the center of power. Every official and aristocratic family here could potentially become either a supporter or an adversary for Gucheng's future. Upon arriving in the capital, I instructed Gucheng to take my visiting card and pay a visit to the Grand Tutor's residence, which is also my maternal family. My father, the Grand Tutor, had initially considered me a discarded pawn when he married me off to Jiangnan. Now I returned with a stepson of immense potential. Their attitude was predictable. Indeed, the Grand Tutor's household paid little heed to me, the married daughter, yet they treated the successful scholar Gucheng with utmost courtesy. My biological mother-in-law, with a forced smile, grasped Gucheng's hand, inquiring about his well-being, all while subtly hinting at marrying her own niece to him. Gucheng navigated the situation flawlessly, neither agreeing nor refusing, keeping them in suspense. Upon returning home that evening, he asked me, "Why engage with these sycophants?" "Because they can be of use," I replied nonchalantly, sipping my tea. The Grand Tutor is the current Prime Minister, and his former students and officials are spread throughout the court. With this connection, you will be spared much trouble in the capital. As for your marriage, it represents a significant political investment. Whom you marry or do not marry involves exchanges of interests. For now, you merely need to make them believe they have a chance, allowing them to be of service to you. Once you've established yourself, choosing a spouse will be a matter of your own volition. Gucheng nodded thoughtfully. As the Imperial examination approached, currents of intrigue swirled in the capital. Candidates showcased their abilities in various ways, some immersed in study, others navigating connections, and some attempting to bribe their way through. I instructed Gucheng to refrain from any distractions and focus solely on his studies, since I had already discovered that the chief examiner for this Imperial examination was the Emperor's teacher, Zhang Juzheng. This venerable elder was even more steadfast than Inspector Chen, impervious to bribes. Anyone attempting to tread a crooked path would find themselves utterly ruined. To deal with such a person, the best approach is to let one's abilities speak. As anticipated, when the results of the examination were announced, Gucheng's name appeared prominently at the top of the list, crowned as the top scholar. The entire capital was abuzz with excitement. Everyone understood that barring unforeseen circumstances, this year's top scholar would undoubtedly be Gucheng. Next came the decisive palace examination. On the eve of the palace examination, I summoned Gucheng to my chamber. I did not engage him in discussions of current policies or require him to recite classics. I posed but one question. "Chenger, Do you know what weighs most on the mind of the current emperor? Gucheng pondered for a moment before responding, is it the northern barbarians or the southern floods? I shook my head. Neither. What he values most is the stability of the dragon throne beneath him. The emperor is suspicious, especially wary of military leaders wielding power. The protagonist in the book, that young general, ultimately triumphed not because he was more skilled in combat, but because he understood how to display humility before the emperor, surrendering military power in exchange for the emperor's trust. And you, I pointed at him, are too conspicuous. Achieving top honors is not necessarily viewed favorably by the emperor. Gu Cheng's expression darkened. What should I do then? Conceal your brilliance, I advised. During the palace examination, you must neither excel too much nor perform poorly. Your essays should be eloquent, yet your views moderate. Refrain from proposing any radical reforms that may lead the emperor to perceive you as uncontrollable. In conclusion, express your boundless reverence for the emperor, ensuring he feels that all your talents are at his service. You must allow him to see your capabilities, but more importantly, your loyalty. The position of top scholar is too conspicuous. We do not seek that. What we desire is a rank that secures your entry into the Hanlin Academy without making you a target of envy. The second or third place would be ideal. A flicker of struggle crossed Gu Cheng's eyes. I understood that for someone of his pride, relinquishing the readily attainable top scholar position was a torment. Yet, I had to make him comprehend, a tall tree invites the wind. Sometimes, taking a step back is to allow for 100 steps forward. I patted his hand. Trust me. Ultimately, he nodded in agreement. On the day of the palace examination, within the Golden Lawn Hall, the emperor personally posed questions. Gucheng executed my plan flawlessly, neither revealing too much nor too little, yet exuding ingenuity and talent at every turn. In the end, the emperor, with a flourish of his brush, appointed him as the third rank of the first class, the second-place scholar. When the news broke, many lamented Gu Cheng's fate. Only he and I understood that this was but the best beginning. As the second-place scholar, he was appointed as a compiler at the Hanlin Academy. This position, though prestigious, held little real power, yet it is the cradle of future cabinet ministers. Gucheng officially stepped into the realm of governance. Life in the capital was 100 times more complex than in Jiangnan. This was the vortex of power, where every step had to be taken with utmost caution. The Grand Tutor's household, seeing Gucheng as merely the second-place scholar and not the top scholar, grew considerably colder in their demeanor. My mother-in-law ceased her discussions of marriage, much to my relief. Gucheng's days in the Hanlin Academy were fraught with challenges. Most of his colleagues were scions of noble families, haughty and dismissive toward Gucheng, a mere country bumpkin without a powerful background. They assigned him the most menial tasks, sorting through piles of old documents and transcribing official records, eager to claim credit for any success, while laying blame for any mistakes squarely on him. Gucheng nearly lost his temper on several occasions, but I always managed to intervene. What is the rush? I said leisurely, munching on sunflower seeds. This is a good thing. A good thing? Gucheng frowned. Absolutely, I replied, spitting out the seed husks. They perceive you as a soft target, which allows them to lower their guard. What you must focus on now is not to contest the trivialities of time with them, but to execute the monotonous tasks at hand to perfection. What is the Hanlin Academy? It is the archival repository of the Great Zhou dynasty, where countless secrets lie hidden among the stacks of ancient papers. The rise and fall of officials, the fortunes and misfortunes of families, and even the royal clandestine affairs are all contained within. Commit these to memory, categorize them, and establish your own database. One day, this seemingly useless information will transform into your most formidable weapon. As for those individuals, I can only scoff. Let them revel in their fleeting triumphs. The higher they leap, the more devastating their fall will be. We have ample time to watch them play their games. Gucheng, upon hearing my words, settled into a state of quiet determination. He ceased his complaints and refrained from engaging in disputes. Like a crocodile lurking in the depths, he waited silently and patiently for the opportune moment to strike. He meticulously reviewed all the documents within the Hanlin Academy, becoming intimately acquainted with a century of the Great Zhou's history and the backgrounds of its officials. His forbearance and talent began to be recognized by those observant enough to notice. Among them was the current 7th Prince, Li Xian, the least favored royal, who had little ambition and preferred to indulge in poetry, wine, and art. The two found common ground and often engaged in scholarly discussions, gradually forming a friendship. I advised Gucheng, cultivate this relationship, but do not choose sides. With the position of crown prince still undecided and various princes embroiled in mortal combat, we are on unstable ground. Aligning ourselves too soon would only render us expendable. This seventh prince, seemingly indifferent to worldly affairs, is, in fact, the safest ally to have. Remember, until the situation clarifies, the best strategy is to offend no one and maintain a respectful distance from all. Gucheng nodded in agreement. The turning point arrived unexpectedly. The emperor decreed the compilation of a history book from the previous dynasty, tasking the Hanlin Academy with the organization of materials. This monumental and tedious undertaking was met with reluctance, and ultimately, the burden fell squarely upon Gucheng's shoulders. His colleagues eagerly awaited his failure, unaware that this was precisely the opportunity Gucheng and I had long anticipated. For an entire month, Gucheng meticulously organized the mountain of materials. Employing modern library management techniques, I had taught him to create an index. Moreover, from an inconspicuous collection of notes, he uncovered a shocking secret. A valiant prince, who had been executed for treason upon the emperor's ascension, had been wronged. And the true traitor was none other than the maternal grandfather of the current crown prince, the powerful duke of the state. When Gucheng shared this revelation with me, my hands trembled with anticipation. I realized our moment had arrived. This discovery must remain under wraps for now, I calmly instructed Gucheng. But why? He questioned, puzzled. This is the perfect opportunity to undermine the crown prince. No, I replied, shaking my head, the time is not yet ripe. The crown prince's foundation is solid, and the duke holds military power. A solitary piece of evidence from a mere collection of notes will not suffice. Prematurely reporting this would only alert them and jeopardize our position. I fixed him with a sharp gaze. This bombshell must be held in reserve until the most critical moment to unleash it. And when will that be? He inquired. When someone needs this bombshell. I replied with a cryptic smile. Though Gucheng did not fully grasp my reasoning, he chose to trust me. He carefully concealed the evidence and submitted the organized historical materials to the emperor. The emperor, upon reviewing the clearly presented documents accompanied by a detailed index, was greatly pleased. When he learned that this was the sole effort of Gucheng, his admiration for him grew exponentially. I remember you, the top scholar of this year, the emperor remarked, his eyes glistening with appreciation for the young man's diligence. The head scholar of the Hanlin Academy, Gucheng's immediate superior, hurriedly attempted to claim the credit for himself. Gucheng, adhering to the humility I had instilled in him, responded neither too lowly nor too haughtily. All of this is due to your majesty's grace. I merely fulfilled my duty. In one fell swoop, he praised the emperor while maintaining his modesty. The emperor, increasingly satisfied, promptly declared Gucheng the sole overseer of the history books compilation and promoted him to the position of Hanlin Academy's instructor, elevating his rank by 2 levels. Those who had previously marginalized Gucheng were left astounded, unable to fathom that the soft-spoken individual they had underestimated had quietly ascended above them. From that day forth, no one dared to belittle Gucheng. Gucheng's position within the Hanlin Academy had solidified, and I began to pave the way for our next move. With wealth accumulated over the years, I opened the most opulent restaurant in the capital, named Tianxiaolu. Not only did it offer novel cuisine and attentive service, but it also became a hub for the exchange of information. I recruited a cadre of sharp-tongued waitstaff and a resourceful manager. The nobility and officials of the capital flocked to dine there. As wine flowed and dishes were savored, numerous confidential tidbits circulated inadvertently. I invited the 7th Prince, Li Xian, to Tianxiaolu. He expressed great admiration for my entrepreneurial acumen. Casually, I hinted at some unsavory rumors regarding the crown prince and the duke of the state, such as the duke's son brazenly abusing his power in the capital and the crown prince's extravagant indulgences and misplaced favoritism. These snippets contained grains of truth and fiction, yet they struck at the emperor's most sensitive spots. Li Xian, perceptive and astute, understood my insinuations. He began to casually bring these matters up in the emperor's presence. Initially, The emperor may not have believed him, but with repeated mentions, seeds of suspicion began to take root in his mind. The emperor discreetly dispatched agents to investigate the crown prince and the duke. Meanwhile, I utilized the information network of Tianxia to deliver well-timed evidence to the emperor's spies. Everything unfolded according to my meticulously crafted plan, progressing smoothly. Just as the crown prince and the duke found themselves ensnared in the emperor's suspicions, an unexpected figure emerged in the capital, Lin Zhao, the young general renowned for his valor and integrity. He had been tasked with escorting a delegation from the northern barbarians to the capital and was celebrated for his military achievements, becoming a figure of great renown. I knew that Gu Cheng's true rival had arrived. Lin Zhao was like a stubborn and unyielding stone, possessing integrity, courage, and nearly every virtue revered in traditional society. Within the narrative, he embodied justice, serving as a natural nemesis to Gu Cheng's perceived malevolence. Indeed, shortly after Lin Zhao's arrival, he clashed with the crown prince's faction. The incident was sparked by the duke's younger son, a notorious rake, who recklessly injured a civilian while riding through the streets. Lin Zhao, passing by, apprehended the miscreant without hesitation and delivered him to the judicial authorities. When the duke's household sought to retrieve him, Lin Zhao firmly retorted that a prince who commits a crime is no different from a commoner. This incident escalated, ultimately reaching the emperor's ears. Naturally, the crown prince's faction fought desperately to defend their own, while the other princes relished the opportunity to witness the spectacle and take a jab at the crown prince. The court erupted into chaos. Gu Cheng observed the unfolding drama with a detached demeanor. Upon returning home that evening, he asked me, "What should we do?" "Do nothing," I replied. "Let them tear each other apart." But Lin Zhao. Gu Cheng's eyes flickered with a subtle intensity. This man was not to be underestimated. "I am well aware," I acknowledged. I nodded. Indeed, he wields a formidable blade, yet presently, that blade lies in the hands of another. Our task is to await his solitude. The ultimate outcome of this endeavor shall be a mutual retreat. In an effort to placate the Duke of the State, the emperor merely imposed a 3-month salary deduction on his son and confined him for half a year. Conversely, to commend Lin Zhao's unwavering integrity, he was generously rewarded with considerable gold and silver. It appeared to be a harmonious resolution, however. All were acutely aware that a rift had been forged between Lin Zhao and the crown prince's faction. Furthermore, Lin Zhao, due to this incident, garnered the admiration of numerous reform-minded officials, establishing himself as a burgeoning and formidable force within the court. On this particular day, the 7th prince, Li Xian, sought out Gu Heng, bringing with him a piece of news. The Minister of Revenue had been investigated for corruption, leaving a vacancy in a position that was both lucrative and pivotal. Various factions within the court had set their sights on this post, vying for it with fervor. Li Xian expressed his desire for Gu Heng to lend his support, ensuring that his candidate would ascend to this role. In return, he promised to fervently back Gu Heng's entry into the cabinet. This was an enormous temptation, and Gu Heng found himself swayed. Yet, I advised him, refuse him. Why? Gu Heng questioned in perplexity. This is our best opportunity to penetrate the core of power. Have you forgotten my counsel? Do not hastily align yourself. I gazed at him with a grave expression. The current situation resembled a chess match, with various factions evenly matched. Once we chose a side, we would become thorns in each other's flesh, targets of animosity. Moreover, the role of Minister of Revenue at present is akin to a cauldron of fire. Whoever assumes this position will inevitably confront a monumental disaster of an empty treasury. In recent years, wars and natural disasters have severely depleted the national coffers. To take on the role of minister is to inherit a hot potato, perform well, and it is expected, but fail. And one may bear the brunt of public ire or even become a scapegoat for the emperor's frustrations. Therefore, our objective should not be to seize this position, but to cede it to our adversaries. Gu Heng's eyes suddenly sparkled. Are you suggesting? I smiled faintly. Hasn't the crown prince longed to install his own people? Let us assist him. In the ensuing days, Gu Heng adopted an uncharacteristically active demeanor in the court. Utilizing his position as a compiler of historical texts, he frequently referenced classical texts, expounding upon the significance of the Ministry of Revenue and the qualifications and prestige requisite for the new minister before the emperor. though he refrained from explicitly endorsing anyone. His rhetoric subtly pointed toward the crown prince's uncle, Duke Li Wei. Li Wei was both greedy and dim-witted. Apart from being the crown prince's uncle, he possessed little merit. The emperor had previously held little regard for him. However, the crown prince's faction incessantly whispered in his ear. Coupled with Gu Heng's stature as a neutral and principled scholar, who also articulated Li Wei's suitability from a professional standpoint, the emperor began to waver. He reasoned that appointing someone from within his circle to oversee the treasury was preferable to entrusting it to those he did not trust. Thus, amidst a chorus of dissent, the emperor resolutely appointed Li Wei as the new minister of revenue. Upon hearing the news, the crown prince's faction rejoiced, while Li Xian seethed with rage, nearly shattering his cup. He confronted Gu Heng, demanding to know why he had betrayed him. Gu Heng, adhering to my instructed response, feigned innocence as he explained, "Your Highness, please temper your anger. I merely addressed the matter at hand without favoritism. Although Duke Li Wei's abilities are lackluster, his royal lineage allows him to command respect in these turbulent times." His words, delivered with grandiloquence, left Li Xian unable to pinpoint any fault, despite his ire. Only Gu Heng and I understood that the true spectacle was only just beginning. Once Li Wei assumed office, he predictably lived up to expectations, transforming the ministry into a chaotic mess. He appointed cronies and marginalized dissenters. Faced with the issue of an empty treasury, his solution was bluntly simplistic: raise taxes. The populace erupted in discontent. Meanwhile, I instructed the storytellers of Tianxia Tower to weave tales of these events, disseminating them throughout the streets of the capital. Tales of the Duke plundering the land while the common folk suffered, and of the Eastern Palace reveling nightly while the treasury dwindled daily, stirred the public's outrage to a fever pitch. Even those officials who had initially supported the crown prince began to waver. At this juncture, Lin Zhao stepped forward. He, alongside dozens of censors, submitted a lengthy memorial detailing Li Wei's 10 major transgressions, with pointed accusations aimed squarely at the crown prince. This memorial detonated within the court like a bombshell. Naturally, the crown prince's faction mounted a vigorous counterattack, branding Lin Zhao as slanderous, alarmist, and an agent of the other princes. The court erupted into chaos once more. The emperor, beset by the uproar, found himself in a quandary. He recognized Li Wei's deficiencies. Yet Li Wei was the crown prince's uncle. To act against him would be tantamount to striking the crown prince's face, and the crown prince was his designated heir. In the midst of this tense standoff, Gu Heng presented his memorial. Though brief, its weight surpassed Lin Zhao's lengthy document, for it was accompanied by a meticulously detailed account. This account recorded every irregular expenditure since Li Wei's appointment, every unreasonable tax imposed, and every tale of silver that found its way to the Eastern Palace. These irrefutable pieces of evidence had been painstakingly gathered through the intelligence network of Tianxia Tower and systematically organized by Gu Heng, who was adept with financial records. The evidence was as solid as a mountain, beyond dispute. In the Golden Yuan Hall, an oppressive silence enveloped the room. All eyes were fixated on Gu Heng, the typically reticent young man who now stood as the fulcrum of the impending storm. The emperor scrutinized the account, his countenance darkening, veins bulging in his hand as he clutched the vermilion brush. He could tolerate the greed of his ministers and the folly of the crown prince, but he could not abide being treated as a fool. The crown prince knelt below, his face ashen, trembling uncontrollably. Duke Li Wei, in a state of utter despair, collapsed to the floor, losing all composure. Gu Heng, the emperor's voice was frigid, devoid of warmth. "Are you certain this account is accurate?" "Your Majesty," Gu Heng bowed, his voice soft yet resonant throughout the hall. "I stake my life on its authenticity. Every word is true." The emperor closed his eyes, and when he reopened them, a tempest of fury surged within. "Guards, seize Li Wei and throw him into the dungeons for a thorough investigation. All implicated shall face severe punishment without exception." The emperor then turned his gaze to his unworthy son, a flicker of disappointment and weariness crossing his features. "You are confined to the Eastern Palace, reflecting on your actions. Without my decree, you shall not step outside." Thus, a monumental upheaval in the court was brought to a close by Gu Heng's seemingly inconsequential account. Duke Li Wei was ultimately sentenced to execution. The Crown Prince's faction, now in disarray, saw numerous officials implicated and imprisoned. Although the Crown Prince's position remained intact, it had effectively become a hollow title. For his role in exposing the corruption, coupled with his previous contributions in the compilation of historical texts, Gu Heng was extraordinarily promoted to Deputy Minister of Revenue, tasked with overseeing the ministry's affairs. He had finally transitioned from a mere scholarly official to a pivotal player in the true center of power. More importantly, through this incident, he had demonstrated his worth to all, proving he was no one's subordinate. He was a force capable of reshaping the game entirely. Once more, the seventh prince, Li Xian, extended an olive branch to Gu Heng, his demeanor more earnest than before. Simultaneously, Lin Zhao developed a sense of camaraderie with Gu Heng, the courageous colleague who defied authority, inviting him several times to his residence for discourse. Following my counsel, Gu Heng maintained a judicious distance from both parties. He had now acquired his own leverage and no longer required allegiance to anyone. With the crown prince toppled, a vacuum emerged in the power dynamics of the court. The remaining princes, in their fervent quest to seize the vacant throne, have intensified their struggles. The capital has transformed into a colossal arena of chaos and bloodshed. Meanwhile, Gu Cheng and I find ourselves ensconced at the eye of this tempest, observing with detached amusement as they battle fiercely for the exalted position, each striving to outmaneuver the other. I inquired of Gu Cheng, "Do you still harbor aspirations of rebellion?" He stood by the window, gazing at the tumultuous sky for a long while before shaking his head. Turning to face me, a faint yet mischievous smile graced his lips. My mother's teachings ring true. Manipulating power is far more engaging than resorting to blades and guns. As I looked at him, I envisioned a future statesman rising gradually to prominence, not merely a statesman, perhaps, but the architect of a grander, more audacious plan that began to crystallize in my mind. After Gu Cheng was appointed as the Deputy Minister of Revenue, he was immediately confronted with the daunting dilemma of how to rectify the gaping deficit in the national treasury. This was a deadlock. Imposing higher taxes would incite civil unrest, while refraining from doing so would paralyze the machinery of the state. The court debated this issue for over half a month without arriving at a resolution. The emperor cast this conundrum into Gu Cheng's lap, and everyone awaited the spectacle of his failure, convinced that this young man, though clever, would surely stumble in the face of such a monumental national matter. Gu Cheng sequestered himself in his study for 3 days and nights. On the 4th day, he approached me with a proposal, intriguingly titled Reform Plan for the State Monopoly on Salt and Iron. Upon perusing it, I couldn't help but smile. Evidently, he understood the concept of exploiting state monopolies for profit. The essence of Gu Cheng's plan was straightforward: to nationalize lucrative enterprises such as salt, iron, tea, and alcohol, thereby allowing the court to manage and sell them uniformly. This approach would not only guarantee the nation's fiscal revenue, but also prevent merchants from hoarding and disrupting the market. Such economic strategies are commonplace in modern times. Yet, during that era, it was nothing short of revolutionary. This method was indeed feasible. I nodded in agreement, then pointed out a few concerns, asking, "But have you considered whose interests this might affect?" Gu Cheng replied gravely, "The salt merchants, the iron merchants, and the entangled web of powerful families behind them." "Precisely," I asserted. "To disrupt their financial avenues is akin to slaying their kin. Should this policy be enacted, a fierce backlash is inevitable. You will face not only political adversaries in the court." "What then?" he queried. I smiled. "Naturally, we must find a scapegoat, or rather, a like-minded ally to champion this initiative." "Who?" he asked. "Lin Zhao," I replied. Gu Cheng appeared taken aback. "Lin Zhao? Would he even agree?" "He will," I stated with conviction, "for on the surface, your policy appears to be a boon for the nation and its people. It strikes at the heart of avaricious merchants, boosts state revenue, and stabilizes prices, all ideals that resonate with Lin Zhao's political aspirations. Present this reform as a noble endeavor for the common good, and he will be eager to support it. We must leverage his virtuous reputation to counter the resistance posed by the powerful families. He will need your position as deputy minister to facilitate the execution of the policy. You shall play the role of the good cop while he takes the lead, rallying support. You will manage the intricate details of implementation, ensuring that the benefits of the reform remain firmly in your grasp. Gu Chang's eyes sparkled with understanding. He comprehended my intent. This was a maneuver that utilized another's weapon to strike at the hardest bones. Regardless of success or failure, there were advantages to be gleaned. If successful, we would reap both fame and fortune. If not, Lin Zhao's naivete would shield us from repercussions. Gu Chang's gaze bore admiration as he regarded me, and after a moment's contemplation, he settled on a single word: genius. I graciously accepted the compliment. Gu Chang approached Lin Zhao, and to my surprise, the process unfolded even more smoothly than anticipated. When Gu Chang unveiled his grand reform plans, Lin Zhao's eyes sparkled with fervor. He grasped Gu Chang's hand with enthusiasm, exclaiming his commitment to the cause of the nation and its people, pledging to join forces with Gu Chang to enact this monumental reform. Witnessing Lin Zhao's face illuminated by the glow of idealism, Gu Chang nearly succumbed to laughter. Shortly thereafter, a campaign for the salt and iron reform, spearheaded by Lin Zhao with Gu Chang's support, commenced in the court. As expected, the proposal faced vehement opposition from conservative officials, primarily representing the influential families. They accused Lin Zhao and Gu Chang of seeking personal gain at the expense of the nation's foundation. In a flurry, impeachment petitions rained down upon the emperor's desk. However, this time, the emperor unexpectedly sided with Lin Zhao and Gu Chang. The rationale was simple: he was out of money. The empty treasury made his reign decidedly unsatisfactory. Now, someone was willing to generate revenue on his behalf, and he had no reason to object. With the emperor's backing, the reforms began to take shape amidst considerable adversity. Lin Zhao fully embraced his role as a passionate advocate. Like a warrior, he engaged in verbal battles within the court, single-handedly confronting the entire conservative faction. His reputation soared among the reformists and the populace alike, hailed as a paragon of integrity and a pillar of the nation. Meanwhile, Gu Chang maintained a low profile. He refrained from participating in court disputes, focusing instead on the practical aspects of the reform. He established a dedicated bureau of salt and iron, recruiting talented individuals adept in mathematics and commerce. He meticulously crafted a detailed process for the monopoly, overseeing every stage from production to transportation to sales. He even introduced the concept of shares, permitting a select group of royal merchants to invest in the bureau, thereby fracturing and co-opting the merchant class. These strategies were derived from my teachings, a modern approach to enterprise management adapted into a formidable weapon in his hands. The results of the reform were remarkable. Within a mere 6 months, the treasury's revenue doubled. The emperor, gazing at the gleaming silver, beamed with delight, frequently commending Lin Zhao and Gu Chang in court. Lin Zhao garnered acclaim, the emperor acquired wealth, and Gu Chang? He amassed tangible power. The newly established Bureau of Salt and Iron was filled with his appointees, and the national network for salt and iron monopolies lay firmly under his control. This was not merely a tool for wealth accumulation, it was a comprehensive intelligence network and a web of connections that could be activated at will. He was no longer merely a bureaucrat. He was evolving into a power broker wielding control over the economy, all accomplished under the protective halo of Lin Zhao's righteousness. Lin Zhao perceived Gu Chang as a kindred spirit, oblivious to the fact that he was merely a pawn, an exceptionally useful pawn. Following the successful reforms, Gu Chang's reputation ascended to unprecedented heights. He was no longer the dependent scholar, but a new elite figure in the court, impossible to overlook. The emperor increasingly relied on him, and the competing princes intensified their efforts to curry favor with him. Even my esteemed father, the Grand Tutor, shamelessly sent lavish gifts and broached the topic of marriage once more. I instructed Gu Chang to accept the gifts while delaying the marriage, for now, we harbored greater ambitions. A mere granddaughter of a minister is no longer worthy of my son. On this day, I was in a private room at Tianxia Tower, listening to the steward report recent intelligence when an unexpected visitor pushed the door open. It was the 7th Prince, Li Xian. He dismissed his attendants, and behind the screen, it was just the two of us. "Madam, you truly possess remarkable skills," Li Xian began, his gaze sharp as he looked directly at me. With the salt and iron reform, leveraging Lin Zhao's name to control the nation's finances, Master Gu's strategy is indeed astute. I lifted my teacup, gently blowing on the steam. Remaining silent, I understood that his visit today was not to commend me. Let us speak plainly, Li Xian continued. The crown prince has been deposed, and my brothers are locked in a deadly struggle. With our father growing older, it remains uncertain to whom the realm of Dezhou will ultimately belong. He paused, scrutinizing me, and declared, I wish to contend for it. I set down my teacup and smiled. Your Highness, are you implying that you wish for Gu Cheng's assistance? Indeed. Li Xian unabashedly revealed his ambition. I know that Master Gu listens to you. Once you give your nod, securing Master Gu's support shall pose no difficulty. I require funds, manpower, and backing from the court. And all of this, Master Gu, or rather, you, madam, can provide. He offered an enticing proposition, once successful. I promise that Master Gu shall become the Chancellor of the Cabinet, second only to the Emperor, while you shall be granted the esteemed title of a first-rank noblewoman, basking in unparalleled glory. His terms were indeed alluring. Any other person might have been swayed. Yet I merely smiled. Your Highness, I said, gazing at him. The title of Chancellor and a first-rank noblewoman sounds appealing. But have you considered the possibility of even better choices? Li Xian was taken aback. What do you mean? I rose and approached him, lowering my voice to utter a statement that turned his face pale. Rather than aiding another to ascend the throne, why not let Gu Cheng take the throne himself? Li Xian's complexion turned ashen, and he sprang to his feet, staring at me in terror as if confronting a madwoman. You must be insane. If these words were to leak out, it would be a death sentence for 9 generations. What do you fear, Your Highness? I replied leisurely, taking my seat again and gesturing for him to do the same. There were no outsiders present. Li Xian sat stiffly, his body trembling slightly. Gu Cheng. He bears the surname Gu, not Li. Does that matter? I countered. Wasn't the founding emperor of the previous dynasty a mere cowherd? Do noble birthrights truly dictate one's potential? I looked at him, ready to drop my bombshell. Your Highness, what do you believe Gu Cheng's true identity to be? Li Xian was momentarily speechless. I continued with a haunting tone, aren't you curious as to how a child from a merchant family in Jiang and came to be adopted? Precisely at the behest of the current emperor? Li Xian's breath quickened. He was not a fool. He sensed a possibility. He is. Indeed, I confirmed. He is the last surviving heir of the former crown prince. This secret was disclosed to me by Gu Cheng himself and served as his greatest leverage for rebellion. Now, I had transformed it into our most formidable bargaining chip. Li Xian was utterly stunned. After a long moment of contemplation, he finally found his voice. Albeit with difficulty, even so, what then? The previous dynasty has fallen, and the people's hearts are set. To attempt a change of regime based on a phantom identity is nothing short of a fool's errand. Of course, we cannot rely solely on identity, I smiled. We must also depend on you, Your Highness. Me? Yes, I nodded. Although you are a prince, you possess no advantages. In terms of legitimacy, you cannot rival the crown prince. In maternal clan strength, you cannot compete with the third prince. In military achievements, you cannot stand against the fifth prince. If you wish to ascend to that position, you must take risks. And we represent your greatest opportunity. My voice was laced with persuasion. Consider this, if we collaborate. You in the light, and we in the shadows. You leverage your identity as a prince to cultivate your power within the court, while we utilize Gu Cheng's identity and our financial resources to discreetly connect with the remnants of the previous dynasty, recruiting soldiers. When the time is ripe, you can instigate a coup within the palace, purging the treacherous officials, while we rally outside in the name of restoring the rightful order. At that moment, the realm shall belong to us. I gazed at him, casting the final bait. Once successful, the empire can be divided. You can rule the north, while Gu Cheng governs the south. We shall each manage our respective territories, remaining free from conflict. This is far superior to your current situation, living in constant fear of becoming prey for others. Li Xian's eyes narrowed intensely. I knew he was tempted. No prince could resist the allure of the throne. Nor could any defeated man reject the chance for a comeback. I need time to consider, he rasped. Of course, I replied, rising. Your Highness may take your time. However, opportunities wait for no one. I opened the door to see him off, watching his disheartened figure retreat. I realized that this fish had taken the bait I had cast, the most lethal and enticing lure. Gu Cheng was destined to become the emperor. This was a notion that had recently sprouted in my mind, an incredibly audacious yet exhilarating idea. Now that I had taken this step, why not aim even higher? To be a powerful minister, a corrupt official, is ultimately to depend on others. Only by firmly grasping one's destiny can one truly feel secure. Returning to my chamber, I poured myself a glass of wine and downed it in one go. The ambition within me ignited like a blazing fire. After nurturing my son for so long, it was time to propel him towards a grand endeavor. Upon learning of my plan, Gucheng remained silent for a considerable time. He exhibited no signs of surprise or fear, merely asking calmly, "Mother, how confident are you?" 50%, I replied. Too low, he remarked. Not at all, I countered. I looked at him, asserting that in matters of usurpation, even a 1 in 10 chance is worth the gamble. Moreover, we possessed a 50% advantage. Our strength lay in the shadows, while our enemies remained in the light. They were still embroiled in their deadly contest for the throne, utterly oblivious to the true threat lurking in the unseen. Li Xian would serve as our best scapegoat, diverting all the firepower towards himself. Your role is to continue your ascent. The higher you climb, the greater your power and, consequently, our odds of success will increase. Gucheng nodded, a similar fervor igniting within his eyes. From that day forth, Gucheng transformed. If he had once been a sword concealed within its sheath, he now began to reveal his sharpness, piece by piece. He no longer made a conscious effort to distance himself from Lin Zhao, but instead sought to collaborate with him, leveraging Lin Zhao's immense reputation within the reformist faction to bolster his own standing. He also ceased rejecting overtures from other princes, deftly navigating between them, exploiting their conflicts to further his own interests. His official position grew progressively elevated from Deputy Minister of Revenue to Minister of Works and then to Minister of Personnel. Within a mere 5 years, through his exceptional acumen and achievements, he ascended to the cabinet, becoming the youngest minister in the history of the Dezhou dynasty. Meanwhile, I exploited the financial might of Tianxia Tower and the Salt and Iron Bureau to weave an expansive web in the shadows. This net enveloped the entirety of Dezhou, comprising loyal remnants of the previous dynasty, border generals we had bribed, informants positioned within various offices, and the underworld forces I had nourished with money and benefits. We were akin to a colossal spider, silently waiting for our prey to ensnare itself within our web. Ultimately, Li Xian consented to collaborate with us. He had no other choice. Under the combined oppression of the other princes, he was precariously close to ruin. Collaborating with us was his only avenue of escape. Thus, a peculiar political alliance was forged. On the surface, Gucheng was a trusted aide to the 7th Prince Li Xian, a core figure within the 7th Master S faction. However, beneath the veneer, Li Xian was merely a pawn that I had pushed to the forefront. We were biding our time, awaiting an opportunity, one that could upheave the entire Dezhou dynasty. The moment arrived in the 2nd year of Gucheng's ascension to the cabinet. The old emperor had fallen gravely ill, incapacitated and unable to manage state affairs. Yet, the position of heir remained unresolved. Several adult princes had openly torn each other apart in their quest for the ultimate right of succession. The capital was rife with an atmosphere of impending violence. The 3rd prince conspired with the commander of the Imperial Guards, plotting a coup, while the 5th prince secretly mobilized border troops, intending to besiege the capital and usurp the throne. The entire city felt like a massive powder keg, ready to explode at a spark. Everyone sensed that a storm of bloodshed was on the horizon, and this was precisely the opportunity one had long awaited. Let us act, I instructed Gucheng. He nodded in agreement. An invisible net tightened quietly over that stormy night. The first to strike was the 3rd prince, who believed he had secured victory by allying with the commander of the Imperial Guards. Little did he know, that commander had long been our agent. When he stormed into the emperor's quarters, he was met by the well-prepared personal guards of the 7th Prince Li Xian. What was supposed to be a coup instantly transformed into a suppression of rebellion. The 3rd prince was captured on the spot. By dawn the next day, Li Xian appeared at the morning court, escorting the bound 3rd prince, and lamented the latter's treason against the emperor. Gucheng, as a witness, presented forged letters exchanged between the 3rd prince and the commander of the Imperial Guards. Of course, the authenticity of the letters was irrelevant at this juncture. The emperor, in a fit of rage, decreed that the 3rd prince be demoted to a commoner and confined for life. The faction supporting the third prince was uprooted entirely. Before anyone could recover from this upheaval, the fifth prince's rebel forces were already at the gates. The fifth prince raised the banner of clearing the court and accused the seventh prince Li Xian and Gu Cheng of being treacherous ministers who had seized the emperor and distorted his decrees, plunging the court into chaos. The capital was instantly engulfed in fear. Within the court, panic reigned. Some advocated for negotiation, while others insisted on a steadfast defense. At that moment, Lin Zhao stepped forward, volunteering to lead troops out of the city to confront the rebels. I knew this was the inevitable choice for such a loyal minister. I also recognized that this was the perfect opportunity to eliminate him as an obstacle. I instructed Gu Cheng to ardently support Lin Zhao in the court, selflessly placing the recently incorporated garrison troops, formerly under the third prince, under Lin Zhao's command. Li Xian, feigning sincerity, praised Lin Zhao as the cornerstone of the nation. Lin Zhao, moved to tears, led his assembled but ill-equipped army out of the city to meet the enemy. Believing he was on a mission to save the country, unaware that he was walking to his demise. Lin Zhao's fate was a foregone conclusion. He commanded a rabble, while the fifth prince's border troops were seasoned warriors. After a brief skirmish, Lin Zhao was utterly defeated. Amidst the chaos, he was struck down by an arrow from the fifth prince's vanguard. The news sent shockwaves through the capital. Despair enveloped everyone as they realized the city could not be defended. Many officials began secretly preparing to surrender. At that critical juncture, Gu Cheng rose to the occasion. He was appointed by the emperor as the commander of the capital's defenses, entrusted with the entire responsibility of safeguarding the city. Ascending the city walls, he faced the darkly menacing rebel forces below and the anxious citizens within, delivering a speech that would be etched in history. He refrained from indulging in grandiose rhetoric, instead conveying the grim fate awaiting their families should the city fall, how they would be subjected to massacre, how their wealth would be plundered. With raw fear, he ignited the primal instinct for survival in all present. Then he opened the national treasury, revealing the accumulated wealth since the reforms. A portion was allocated to reward the troops, while another was distributed among the citizens defending the city. Protecting the city means these gold coins are yours. If you fail, your lives will belong to others. Under the lure of substantial rewards, the desire to survive coupled with the promise of wealth galvanized the previously demoralized defenders into an extraordinary fighting force. The ensuing 3 days and nights were marked by a brutal contest of attack and defense. The fifth prince's rebels charged the city walls time and again, only to be repelled each time. The ground at the city's base was piled high with corpses, rivers ran red with blood. Throughout it all, Gu Cheng stood steadfast on the walls, unarmored, personally rallying the troops. His imposing figure became a stabilizing force for all defenders, even winning the admiration of the seventh Prince Li Xian. For the first time, Li Xian gazed at Gu Cheng and sincerely thought that perhaps entrusting the realm to this man was not a misstep. On the fourth day, just as the defenders were on the brink of exhausting their supplies, a turning point emerged. Outside the city, a large army bearing the banner of Jing and suddenly appeared, delivering a devastating strike against the fifth prince's rebels from behind. The fifth prince's forces were caught between two fronts and collapsed in an instant. The fifth prince himself was slain amidst the chaos. The capital was saved. When the leader of the Jing army removed his helmet to reveal a face strikingly similar to Gu Cheng's, everyone was astonished. He was the former king of Jinnan, the last remnant of the previous dynasty's royal family, still in military service. Approaching Gu Cheng, he knelt on one knee and proclaimed, "I have arrived late to your aid. Long live our emperor." The crowd atop the city walls was rendered speechless, their minds a blank slate as they looked between Gu Cheng and the king of Jinnan. Gu Cheng slowly descended from the walls, approached the king of Jinnan, and helped him to his feet. He then turned to face all present. His voice, though quiet, resonated clearly in every ear. "The old dynasty has perished. The new must rise. From this day forth, I shall be the sovereign of this realm. The era shall be known as Kaiyuan." Gu Cheng ascended the throne with astonishing ease. The old emperor, upon hearing of the fifth prince's defeat and the capital's deliverance, succumbed to his illness and passed away. The seventh Prince Li Xian was the first to step forward, proclaiming Gu Cheng as the new ruler. The court officials, sensing the tide, hastily knelt, shouting praises. Thus, a change of dynasty was achieved in an atmosphere bordering on peace, without large-scale bloodshed or protracted warfare. The Dezhou dynasty had fallen, and a new dynasty was born under Gu Cheng's reign. As the mother of the new emperor, I was honored as the Empress Dowager, residing in the most splendid Xianing palace of the Imperial court. On the day of the coronation, adorned in the elaborate robes of an Empress Dowager, I sat upon the elevated throne, watching Gu Cheng ascend to the supreme imperial seat, clad in the dragon robe, accepting the homage of the officials. His demeanor was indifferent yet imbued with an innate, imperial majesty. A torrent of emotions swelled within me as I gazed upon him, reminiscent of the boy from a decade ago, standing before me with poison in hand and an ominous gaze. Who could have imagined that the child, once solely fixated on revenge through the clumsiest means, would today become the sovereign of this realm? And I, a soul from another realm, have astonishingly crafted an emperor with my own hands. The sensation is undeniably exhilarating. After the ceremony concluded, Gu Chengping dismissed all others and made his way to the Xining palace. He had already exchanged his dragon robe for a simple set of everyday attire. Approaching me, he poured a cup of tea with the same natural ease as before. "Mother," he began, his voice imbued with a softness I had never before encountered. I acknowledged, accepting the teacup. "What plans do you have for the future?" he inquired. "Plans?" I chuckled. What plans could an old woman like me possibly have? Here in the palace, I shall enjoy my twilight years watching you, ensuring that you fulfill your role as emperor. Gu Cheng regarded me with a serious expression. "Mother, without you, there would be no today," asked me. "This empire is built upon your sacrifices. Anything you desire, I can provide. Power, wealth, or if you wish to oversee the court, that too can be arranged." Upon hearing his final words, I nearly sputtered the tea from my mouth. "Please no," I exclaimed, waving my hands repeatedly. I had no interest in dealing with the trivialities of bureaucratic documents. Looking at him earnestly, I said, "Cheng'er, now that you are emperor, there is still much you must learn. How to balance the court, how to manage your ministers, how to comfort the populace. These are lessons you must discover for yourself. I have imparted all I can teach. The remaining path is yours to tread." I paused and added, "However, there is one thing you must remember." "What?" He leaned closer, and in a lowered voice, I shared with him my final and most crucial piece of advice, not only as his mother, but as his political mentor. Being an emperor is permissible, but never strive to be a benevolent one. A court that is too pristine cannot function. What you must become is the greatest of the corrupt officials, grasping the wealth of the realm tightly in your hands. Then, with that wealth, you shall nurture the strongest army, construct the widest canals, and pursue any endeavor you desire. As for the scorn of the censors, consider it mere background noise. History is written by the victors. As long as you ensure that the people have food to eat and clothes to wear, you shall be remembered as a transcendent emperor." Gu Cheng remained silent for a long while after my words. Finally, he smiled, a smile akin to the melting of ice and snow, carrying a sense of profound relief. "Mother, I understand." He rose, bowing deeply to me. "Your son shall heed your teachings." Watching his departing figure, I realized my mission was complete. I had successfully nurtured a vengeful, rebellious youth into a capable, even exceptional, cunning emperor. What sort of emperor he would become, I did not know. But I was certain he would not be a naive fool, easily exploited. That was enough for me. I reclined upon the soft couch, closing my eyes, ready to embrace my long-cherished retirement as a dowager empress, living a life of leisure. This journey through the pages of a book was indeed a profitable venture. The end of the narrative. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next tale.